Apple just put this video out. They were talking about how they make their presentation, introducing all of their new products. I mean, it's a major production. Every time a new product from Apple comes out, I mean, they blow it up with videos and storylines, and it's like being at a rally when they do it. And so many times in the church, when it comes to the greatest news, it just comes across so drab, and the expression on some people's faces, like they really don't want to say it. Well, we want to say it. We want to say it. And there are great stories to tell. So I'll begin this story and give you the end of it later. In coming up, coming up in an urban area, in the urban jungle, and then I had my grandparents. Rural is rural, even to the point of eating red clay dirt that was like medicine. James waving his hand back there. The red clay was medicinal. Just like the new thing, apple cider vinegar. You take apple cider vinegar, but red clay.
Yes, sir.
Was tasty, right?
Yeah.
Dirt. I mean, it's red clay dirt, muddy like thick. Roland is looking like, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, it was like moist. That's correct, right? Moist, and you could cut it. Just have it, red clay dirt. And you say, who wants to eat dirt? But all I can tell you is the red clay dirt. So when I go to the grandparents, unless you were going to town or the church, you couldn't wear shoes. Now, back in the urban jungle, you had to, or your feet would have been on fire. But then you go to grandparents, shoes got to go. Unless it's church, quote, or going to town. Uptown. To look a certain way. The appearance. But in the meantime,
yes, sir,
your feet was cutting through everything in sight. From rocks on the road to the dirt that could get in between your toes and everything else. So there were these two worlds, these two lives they had to live. Every summer would be with the grandparent. And so then, while experiencing life on the farm, from everything, the fascinating aspect of what's called, so this is really historical here, slopping hogs. Okay, so what does that mean? That means you take everything that everybody else is done with.
Yes, sir.
Get this now. That's why you talk about pork. You take everything that everybody else is done with,
yes, sir,
and you throw it into a trough.
Yes, sir.
The same type of trough that when Jesus came, he was born in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was a feeding trough.
Yes, sir.
Just like what the hogs, what the swine would do. And so you had to, what they call it was slop the hogs. I guess you get this history lesson about the agricultural industry and where it's on the farm. You had to slop the hogs. Somebody had to take these buckets of stuff and just throw it in there. And as soon as you throw it in there, they would go to work.
Hogs couldn't wait to get it.
As soon as it drops, they're diving in at it. They never look up. They always just dive straight in. They would never look to see who threw it in there or any of that. So they never, and some of God's people never look up to see where their blessings come from. Just like hogs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They just dive in and go on and enjoy. So then you had the hunting dogs, and we're going somewhere. The hunting dogs, they would take them and go out and shop for dinner without paying, because they would go and shoot squirrels and rabbits and deer, and that was the meat. And then the salt house, man, this is a history lesson. The salt house, after they skin it, the salt house, because there was not refrigeration, they would hang it in these areas and salt it down that could last for months.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that's what was had for the entire time during the certain seasons. And then they would raise ducks and they would raise chickens, and so you had to go out and feed the chickens and work with the ducks and they'd always protect the roosters because the roosters were the producers to make sure they had more chicken to go around. If you get rid of the rooster, the hens are worthless. So that's another story. But so there, and then you had to go to the wells that none of them were ever where you live. You had to always walk to a well to get water to go into the house that could be used for cooking and also for bathing, because the bathing was done in a tub, a number 2 tub. I get to say, what is that? It's a big tub that you get in. Yes, that you get in, and you had to boil the water, Brother Derek. You had to boil the water in a black pot to get it hot, and then you pour the hot water in, and then the rest of it, you had to keep going down to the well in order to get it, to get this right, and you didn't want to be the last one to take a bath, because
2 or 3 would take a bath
in the same water.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One is out. The evidence that they've been in still remains, because what comes off your body rises to the top, and it's just like boiling something.
Yes,
I guess this is deep stuff here, but it's just telling you how we live, you know. So just the one that you'd be sitting here, somebody else would have bathed, and whatever dirt came off their body would rise to the top, and it's almost like, who's next?
Welcome.
You like, no way.
And so it's like, who's next?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
And then there's what we call the outhouse.
Yes, sir.
And the outhouse, you always wondered, it wasn't no house. Nobody really wanted to stay there. They just had things to do.
Yeah.
So when you go to the outhouse, which was supposed to be private, but it's never private, because potentially, Asia, what you might have had for dinner with the chickens, they may have come to devour the remnants of what you no longer needed.
Certified worms.
So
The worms.
So that's why before they got ready to take the chickens, so Sister One, it wasn't that bad. What they did, they took them and they set them apart. They put them in a space, and they would only corn feed them to flush them out, to make them ready, that they no longer, all the rest of the stuff they were doing no longer was done. So that's what you call grain fed, the way now you talk about grain fed fish and that. They would cleanse them out. And they say, well, where's all of this going? Well, it's going somewhere. So therefore, this life, but there was one thing that stood out that gets to this Psalm 91. There was what was called the chicken coop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the chicken coop, these were not just the regular ones that could run around. These were the ones that was being set apart. Some of them would be the egg deliverers.
Yes, sir.
And you would go in and collect the eggs that these in the coop would have, and that became meals. Brother David, these eggs were the kind now, brown, like he said, that you'd have to pay premium price for, because it would come directly, and that's what they would do. But this sometime that same hen that was delivering eggs delivered other chicken, little ones. That same one. Sometimes they would get the eggs before they were doing the other thing. But if they did not, then there would come what would be called a setting hen. When it's called setting hen, that meant they were preparing to birth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Other chicklets. Now that's where this psalm comes in, and we'll come back and tell you the rest of the story. So Psalm 91, verses 1 through 11.
Wow.
And just remember the chicken, and we'll come back. We stopped at the chicken in the house. And we'll come back and tell you the rest of the story.
Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty.
Now I want you to understand that this is really a secret place. You know, where you have your getaway. If you're under the shadow, then you're close, because the shadow comes from something else that originates. The shadow is attached to what it's reflecting, because the shadow is on a reflection of an object or a person that really exists. So when it says I'm in his shadow, then that means I've got to be close. I've got to be attached to him, because the shadow is always attached to what it is reflecting.
Yes, sir.
It's not at a distance, because you cannot be in the shadow of something if you're not somewhere near it.
Amen.
So you literally have to be there. It's like being in the shade of a tree. That to be in the shade of a tree, you had to be there so that it was covering, and that's what that imagery is like. Okay, keep going.
I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust.
He is my safe place. Refuge means safety and getting to a safe place. Not only is it this safe place, but it says a fortress, which means it's protected and it's shielded. So they had to take 45 down, although he says it was for another reason, but they had to take him down in the shelter of the White House earlier this month. They took he and his family down in the shelter, in the safe place, although he said he was just touring, but they took him down there anyway, away from everything else that was going on around. That's like the safe place. In Israel, they have bomb shelters that they have to use all of the time, and when an alarm goes off, they all quickly go to the shelter, the safe place, that they can be covered from everything else that goes on around them. Well, God says, this is what I am to you. Keep going.
Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day.
You should not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrows or the things that are going on during the day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're laying down and you're hearing alarms and you're hearing other things. You said something is happening. Or you read the news, or you watch the news, or you listen to the news. And it says, you shall not be afraid of all of that. Then, verse 6 is speaking to where we are right now. This is COVID-19. Let's go to verse 6.
Nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday.
Didn't I tell you what that is? Mm-hmm. Can you just say SARS, COVID-19? Mm-hmm. The plague, the pestilence. Now, I want you to notice, see, if it hasn't come to where you are, that's a way of letting you know how God's protecting and shielding, although it's all around us. That there's nobody who's a part of us who has lost their life. Just notice what he's done. Verse 7.
1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but none will come near you.
Look at the numbers. They're all around. People are dying. Things are happening to people. So much. And so much of it we've been shielded from. Just so much of this we've been shielded from. So much that we're not even aware of that goes around us. Yeah. Trees are not falling down on your dwelling place. And the list of things just go on. Is that he's watching over us even in a way that so much of it we take it for granted. Because we don't think about it. We read about it at a distance. About the things that are happening. But he is protecting us so many times before we even ask. Because of who he is. Okay, keep going.
You will only observe it with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and make the Most High your dwelling. No harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent.
As this new, and it's not a second wave, it's just still waving. As these things around us are happening, not only about the pestilence, but the violence, the things that people are doing, and how these images that you're seeing where they are finding this person broke into here, this person did this, and you're seeing these things all around you, and nobody's broken in on you.
Amen.
When you think about how he's shielding you, and you've got to know that some could have been scoping where you live.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the angels, ministering spirits, Hebrews 1 and 2, just shifted them and took their eyes off of where you were.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Lord.
And moved them. That you haven't been hijacked in a car.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
And it could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be, quote, in a neighborhood where you're trying to avoid, because you'd have to be avoiding all of them.
Yep.
At this stage, he's just watching over.
That's right.
Watching over.
That's right.
And you got to understand, you could be carrying. You could be licensed to carry and can't get to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you understanding?
Yes,
How he's watching them. You say, oh, I let them mess with me if they want to. I got something for them. But you got to get to the something for them.
That's right.
That's right.
Hopefully you get there before.
Yeah, are you understanding that? Because then you got to say, it's in my glove compartment. It's on my back hip. It's right beneath the seat. That move may have been too late. Although you were assured. That's why you rather trust the most on high than Smith & Wesson.
Come on. Amen.
Amen.
More.
More. That's right.
Now, we're not saying don't do what you need to do, but don't trust it. It might not even fire. Okay, that's a whole nother story there. But it's been so many times lives have been saved because it went click and was loaded.
I'm a witness.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to verse 10 and 11. Then we're going to back up.
No harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways.
Now, remember we said in Hebrews 1, he says they're ministering spirits. And then I would say, he shall give his angels charge over you. In other words, they have been commissioned to watch over you. And you can't even see them. You can't even see who he has commissioned
Yes, sir.
to watch over you. And did you know there's some stuff they're deflecting? It's not kung fu, but they're stopping things from happening.
Angels of the Lord.
And you can't even see them.
Angels of the Lord. Yes, sir.
You can't even see them.
Heavenly host partnering to the process.
Now back to the story. All right, where did I leave off? The story. The chicken. In the chicken coop. All right, okay. Go back to verses 3 and 4 and we'll finish the story.
Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart.
Shield means, and you notice how law enforcement has these shields to block stuff. It's just like the armor got the shield of faith. But then the buckler is like it's an extra level of security. An extra level of security. Well, verse 3 says, he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler. Fowler, just think of fowl, bird, watching over, trying to be caught. Well, this chicken, the one who's delivering the eggs, and now they're getting ready to deal with the birthing process. They have to, their body heat has to sit on these eggs. They have to, what they're called now are setting, they call them setting hens. their title, their job description has changed from just delivering eggs. Now it's become a setting hen because they're to have birth. And so this hen will sit on these eggs, on this nest, sit on these eggs, and you'll start to see their feathers expand.
Yep.
Once they're like this, their feathers expand. And what they're doing is they're making sure their entire body covers all of the eggs, so that the heat is generating, is getting these, well, just a regular egg now. A regular egg that you eat could potentially be a chicklet. All of them, but it requires this hen to set, a setting hen has to set there so that this heat can cause these things to come together in a certain way.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's such a thing, just like this hen is there to shield and nobody knows what's underneath, other than those who understand farming. They know that that's a setting hen because they don't move, and they have to bring food to them. They rarely leave the covering of the egg because they understand they're part of this process. Yes. Now they become attached. And they don't do it all the time, but they become attached to this certain set at that point. And so they're there to shield. Now there's what is called a chicken snake.
Oh, my God.
Yes,
A
sir.
real name, a chicken snake,
Yes, sir.
who comes into the yard looking for the eggs,
Yes, sir.
specifically for the eggs to suck out of the eggs what it contains.
Yes, sir.
And so this chicken snake comes in and spots the hen sitting, and the hen is prepared to fight the snake. But they don't move from covering the eggs. So they try to peck at the snake. Every time the snake try to come, they try to peck at the snake, try to peck at it. Can you just picture the snake is coming at them, and they're trying to peck at it because they also want to protect the life that they're responsible for now.
Yes, sir.
So they stay there and just keep pecking, and the snake starts stabbing at them. And then sometime the farmer goes in and finds that the hen is dead, is stiff, just there because it's been killed by the snake. But it has protected the life of the eggs. Now Jesus took the sting of the serpent. He took it because he came to die so that we would not. So he covers, he covers us, and he took it and said, no, I'm not coming down. And he could have come down, but he said, I'm not coming down.
Yeah.
He said, I can stop this right now. But he stayed on the cross.
Yes, sir.
Because his thing on the cross was like this hen covering these chicks so that they could have life. He said, I came that you might have life and life more abundant. He said, nobody takes my life. I lay it down and I'll take it back up again. And that chick, so he or she who hides in the shadow is protected because of whose shadow it is.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
See those eggs, those inside of the egg, they don't even have any idea as to what's going on. Because remember, they're not even fully alive yet.
Being developed.
And then take it a step further, that sometime when they start hatching, you can hear this thump, 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 thump. And see, another hen could come and cover where the dead one left off. And they go thump, 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 and because they're fighting to come out in the struggle. And children who don't know any better see one coming out and try to help out the other ones. They say, well, if it's 6 of them and 2 of them have come out, let me help the other one, but they find that they're stillborn. Because they've got to go through this process. And as for us, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. So our battle has to be that we've got to put on the armor, although he gave us the armor. So as these chicks struggle to come out, we battle, we wrestle, we do that, but we got to put on the armor because the life of this chick is dependent on them doing what they need to do. That's to keep struggling, to keep fighting until now they're on their own. It's got us. So all this stuff around us, all these things that are going on, that hen sitting on these eggs, giving his life if necessary. Jesus gave his life for us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And if God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, gave his only, that whosoever, and he said, is there anything he would hold back from us? Because he's already given his best. He's given his best. And so when you start wondering about these things that are going on around you and what's going to happen, just remember under whose shadow. And if you're not there, get there.
That's right,
Now,
sir.
if you say, well, how do I get there? You just need to say, I don't want to be uncovered. See, if you're listening now, all you need to say, listen, I don't want to be uncovered. I want somebody to fight the serpent. And he's already won. He's done it one time. And all he said, if you want to be under this shadow, all you have to do is say you want to be under this shadow. He said, I don't know what you mean. I don't know exactly what you mean. You say you're tired of living life on your own. And I will welcome you. I will welcome you.
Amen. Amen.
Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words that I speak be acceptable unto you. May the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you too. Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight.
May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be pleasing unto you. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you. May the words of my mouth be pleasing to you. May the thoughts of my mind be pleasing to you too. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight.
Together.
May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight.
Let the words I speak,
May the words that I speak be acceptable to you. May the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you too. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight.
let the words I speak,
Let the words that I speak be acceptable to you. May the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you too. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight.
Let our lives reveal salt and light, a city on a hill shining bright. Let our words edify and magnify our love and magnify our God above. May our words reveal salt and light, a city on a hill shining bright. May our words edify and magnify our love for our Father in heaven above.
Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words that I speak be acceptable to you. May the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you too. Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight. Let the words that I speak be acceptable to you. May the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you too. Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your
Amen. Say it. To my left is Gwen, Asia's out front, and to Wanda's on my right. This song that you just heard is an original composition by Tawanda. Tawanda's hand. I'm holding my hand over her head. She's under the shadow of my hand. You got this? She's under the shadow of my hand. Now, the question is, what are you going to do now with what you heard? Because you're challenged to rethink where we are. And he's not given us a spirit of fear. He's only given us the power, a sound mind, a stable man, not a double man, but a sound man. So our time is up.